scientific in its nature and origin. And I suppose then some apology is called for. Why? By apology, I don't mean to say I'm sorry, but some defense, some explanation. Why would you think that I have anything to offer on that matter, apart from maybe some training in Christian apologetics on the question of evolution? What is it that I have to offer you? Well, I want to suggest that what I have to offer you is going to go to the very heart of the matter in the debate over evolution. However, because many people don't understand the nature of that debate or that dispute, they're not aware of the fact that the philosopher's perspective and what you might be able to offer, even apart from technical training, is going to decide the issue having to do with evolution. Philosophy used to include the natural sciences. We go far enough back, the pre-Socratic days, the Milesian philosophers, and philosophers like Democritus, who give us our physical theory that we call atomism. Or even if we look at the days of Aristotle, you will see that the natural sciences were considered part of the domain of philosophy. And even as we move ahead in Western history, come up into something closer to the modern era, to the time of Bacon and Pascal and Leibniz, many philosophers at that time were still doing work, creative and important work in the natural sciences and math and so forth. But even apart from the historical pedigree philosophers have for talking about natural science, the fact of the matter is that the philosopher's job, among other things, is to cross-examine theories. You see, a philosopher needs to be trained specifically in law in order to do cross-examination of legal theory. Nor does the philosopher need to be trained in a natural science, although he should probably know the terms and something elementary about it, in order to cross-examine theories in the natural sciences. Philosophers examine theories, hypotheses, worldviews, if you will, to see whether they are cogent, whether they are coherent, whether the underlying assumptions or the nature of the theory comports with what it says it is. We look for good argumentation. We try to detect fallacious reasoning. That's part of the task of philosophy. And so I think it is part of the philosopher's job to be looking at the theory of evolution. And you'll see in a few moments, I trust, at the end of my lecture, when philosophy did turn a discerning and critical eye to the theory of evolution, what appeared to be this huge monster, this theory which no one dare accuse of being false or even examine as though it might be false, this overwhelming cultural paradigm of evolution that has got our universities in its grip proved to be nothing, not even a pussycat. It turned out to not have any scientific credentials at all. And that is the shocking thing. That's what I'm here to talk about tonight. When I ask, is evolution scientific, my answer is going to be no, it is not. It is not a scientific theory. And I'm going to drive that home and drive that home and drive that home tonight. Some of you will finally be exhausted by the end of this lecture saying, okay, you've made your point. But I want it to be something that sinks in deep. Because the reason why Christians so often are, one, intimidated, or two, driven back by those who propound the theory of evolution is that they do not know what they are dealing with. And as long as you think, well, the scientific facts support evolution, here I am stuck holding on to my views by faith, then you're going to be at a great disadvantage as a defender of the faith and someone who wants to set forth the Christian world and life view. In Hebrews, the 11th chapter, verse 3, we read these words, "By faith we understand that the worlds have been framed by the word of God, so that what is seen has not been made out of the things which appear." Why do we believe in creation? We believe in creation by faith. We believe this because God has declared it in his own word, and we trust the word of God. And the word of God tells us that this world was made by the word of God, so that the things that now appear did not arise from those things which we see. This world cannot be accounted for naturalistically. You cannot expect to take present forces and those things which we now encounter in the world and in terms of them alone, account for the origin of the world. By faith, we believe that the world was created by the Word of God, so that this world and the things that we experience cannot be understood, cannot be accounted for, did not arise from the things which appear. Since the Bible declares we believe this by faith, and many Christians think faith is just a matter of some kind of emotional leap without any regard for evidence or proof or intellect for that matter, it's easy when we come up against the naturalistic scientist who has his own convictions about evolution to be intimidated. Because the evolutionist wants you to believe that his theory is scientific, whereas you're just like some Sunday school deluded child who believes these things by faith. And so if I can dislodge that one antithesis, that one contrast tonight, then we will take a very large step towards seeing why evolution is not a problem at all. In the second lecture, I'll get into some of the specific problems, the theory of evolution. So let's begin by just listing what people think a scientific theory is like, and then I'm going to talk about the theory of evolution as theories go, and let you be the judge as to its scientific credentials. People consider science to be something naturalistic. It's not scientific to be hankering for supernatural explanations. Science is to be naturalistic, not something that goes beyond the natural order or that appeals to that which goes beyond the natural order. Moreover, that is scientific, which is impersonal. We aren't to look at the world that we live in and think of it as somehow having personal attributes. Specifically, the world we look at is not to be seen as having some direction or purpose or aim or design. To see things in a scientific light is to take every fact as a brute fact in itself, not try to connect it and see some kind of pattern and then personify that pattern. To use the fancy terminology, a scientific explanation of what happens is not or is non-teleological. The word teleological means oriented toward a goal, that which strives after a specific purpose, or that which is aimed at a specific end. Scientific explanations are not supposed to be teleological explanations. They are not supposed to be explaining the natural world as though it's moving toward a specific end or has inherent in it purpose or direction. And by teleological, I just put in parentheses here, remember that pertains to whatever has aim or purpose or design in it. Moreover, and this will be more readily understandable by you, something is scientific if it's not religious. People in our culture expect that scientists are not going to be affected by prejudices having to do with the nature of reality as a whole or God's existence or whatever that may be. In fact, to be scientific, in all honesty, means you don't have any prejudices. You're supposed to be open-minded and neutral in your investigation. Specifically, a particular theory is scientific, or it falls within the realm of natural science, if it is tested in an observational way. One has got to go out and have observational evidence, either through yourself or through others. You must see or hear or taste or touch and bring that evidence of the senses, bring perceptual or observational evidence to bear on it, rather than coming to your conclusions in a speculative way. To be scientific, then, is to be observational, not speculative. And then one other crucial characteristic of scientific theories, as they're usually understood, is that a scientific theory is one that's not propounded dogmatically, but in a tentative way, and in a way which leaves it testable by our observation. Okay, so as we get started, when I ask the question, is evolution scientific? When you listen to those who propound not only the theory of evolution, but when they set science over against other approaches to human knowledge and to human conduct, you will find that the scientific approach is usually described in one, if not all, of these ways. To be scientific is to be naturalistic. It's to have an impersonal view of that which you're studying. It's not to have a teleological or a purposive explanation of what we see in the world. It's not to be religious. It's to approach things without prejudices. It's to be observational in your approach to evidence rather than speculative. And it's to set forth theories that are not dogmatic but testable. By faith, we believe the world was formed by the Word of God. And now when you go off to the university, you'll be told, oh yes, you believe those things by faith. But here at the university, we need to be scientific. Let's look at the history of evolution and the nature of the evolutionary hypothesis and see what conclusion we come to about that particular conflict or alleged contrast between the factual approach of science and the faith approach of the Christian. In the course of the 19th century, in the 1800s, the scientific approach to man's understanding of his own past came increasingly to dominate over a supernaturalistic outlook, and particularly to dominate over of traditional religious belief. Darwin's theory of evolution saw man as unmistakably part of the order of nature, unmistakably part of the history of nature. That is, man is natural in his physical as well as his mental and moral characteristics. Everything about man was to be explained naturalistically. Although there was, of course, a contrast and a conflict to be found between religion and science prior to the evolutionary controversy, Darwin's theory elevated the issue of the relationship of religion and science to the level of a major international cultural concern. It's as though all of those issues that had predated it finally came to a head, and in this one particular issue, the notion of naturalism versus supernaturalism, the debate between those two would finally be decided, with all of the ramifications for man's understanding of himself, of his culture, of his history, and how he should live his life, their lives following from that. And so, for good or for ill, the year 1859, when Darwin published his book, The Origin of Species, became a significant turning point in the history of man's thought, particularly in the history of the way man thinks about himself and about his world. Previous to 1859, the diversity that we find in the world, all the different kinds of plants and animals and so forth, the diversity that we find in the world was interpreted and set in order and seen as part of the harmony of God's creation of the world revealed in the Scriptures. Not only that, the orderly and harmonious condition of things had been one of the major evidences advanced by Christian defenders of the faith for the truth of the Bible. Darwinian evolution threatened that outlook on the natural world, as well as threatened the ability to use the world as a proof for God's existence. Darwinian evolution threatened to eradicate the notion of any creative design in the world, saying that we can explain the natural order without reference to God's creative purposes. And in that sense, Darwinianism would pave the way for the full ascendancy of an unadulterated naturalistic view of the world and man. Yes, I don't want to make Darwin out to be the be-all and end-all of the debate between religion and science, but it becomes a very significant turning point in the history of man. Because at this point, if man can be understood naturalistically and his history can be interpreted naturalistically, then we're on the verge of giving up any supernatural conception of this world at all. Charles Hodge, the well-known Princeton theologian, wrote a book entitled What is Darwinism? And he answered the question, what is Darwinism, by saying, it is very simply put, atheism. Now, in our second lecture, we're going to get into the idea of theistic evolution. But you need to understand that at the beginning of the conflict between Christianity and evolution, it wasn't so much an issue of what version of creation do you want, how is it that God went about making the world, It was seen for, I think, in essence, what it is, as a conflict between atheism and theism, between naturalism and supernaturalism. Darwin himself formulated his fundamental theory of evolution within 2 years of ending an exploration that he took on a ship called the Beagle. He went down to the Galapagos Islands and thereabouts. And by the time that he had formulated the doctrine of evolution, he had also in his personal life come to declare his rejection of the doctrine of everlasting punishment. He called it, tongue-in-cheek, a damnable doctrine to believe that God would damn people for all eternity. He, moreover, had rejected the truthfulness of the Gospels as they recounted the miracles of Christ. You have to understand, then, that Darwin himself had something of an axe to grind with the supernaturalistic outlook of the Bible. He wasn't somebody who was utterly indifferent or neutral on religious questions. By the time he wrote The Origin of Species, he was a rigorous opponent of any divine intervention in the course of nature. He went on to call the doctrine of special creation, and I quote, a curious illustration of the blindness of preconceived opinion. I want you to remember those words, because I intend to have them come back and haunt this man for making that kind of horrible remark. He says the doctrine of creation is a curious illustration of the blindness of preconceived opinion. Darwin wanted to banish any thought of divine control of the world and the direction of history. And so he said, and I quote him again, no shadow of reason can be assigned for the belief that variations in the natural order were intentionally and specially guided. Darwin was at best a deist, someone who does not believe God is actively in control of and intervenes in the natural world in the course of history. He was at best a deist, but he later abandoned even deism for sheer agnosticism. And he said, I quote, the whole subject is beyond the scope of man's intellect. The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us. So you need to understand that Darwin, you see, ultimately becomes agnostic. He doesn't even want to say God is, in a deistic way, the one who winds up the universe, sets it in order, then stands back and it evolves and develops in its own way. Darwin says we are not able to say anything about the origin of this world itself. Now, if you have any training in apologetics along the lines that we try to use in the study center, I trust at this point you see an immediate problem. Darwin is a rationalist. He believes that there are laws that give uniformity to nature in terms of which we can predict what's going to happen and explain what has happened in the past. He's very rationalistic about the way nature works. But on the ultimate question of where the natural order comes from, he's irrationalistic. No one can know. It's impossible. It's, as far as he's concerned, a chance universe. And so on the firm foundation of chance, we have built a world that operates not randomly and by chance, but in terms of irrefutable order and predictability and determinism. You have indeterminism leading to determinism. The man who formulated the theory of natural selection simultaneously with Charles Darwin, his name was Alfred Wallace, broke with Darwin and announced that natural selection does not apply to man, Wallace said, does not apply to man's mental powers, and he argued that man's spiritual essence came into action at the appearance of man. That is, Wallace favored a theistic evolutionary approach. And so he said, and I quote Wallace now, a superior intelligence has guided the development of man in a definite direction and for a special purpose. When Darwin heard that this co-formulator of the theory of natural selection had written these words, he immediately decried this as a failure of nerve on the part of Wallace. He called it a disdainful hankering for miracles. A disdainful hankering for miracles. That here you have the natural world evolving, doing its own thing, and then at a certain point, God intervenes, there's the miracle, and makes man a special spiritual kind of being with a mind and morality and so forth. You see, as far as Darwin was concerned, nothing was to interfere with the determinism of natural law. Nothing was to break the continuity of man with the animal kingdom from which he evolved. There was to be no special creation at all. Now, it should be obvious from what I've said thus far that the theory of evolution was a far-reaching religious theory then. It was certainly religious in its commitments and religious in its implications. It had definite theological assumptions, and it had theological consequences. You can't overlook that. Here's Darwin. He doesn't say, well, take this theory, and if you want to put a religious garb on it, that's fine. When Wallace does that, Darwin explodes. Don't go hankering after miracles. We can't know about the origin of the world beyond what we see in the natural order and how things are progressing in our own day. Evolutionists have made it rather clear that the theory of evolution is anti-religious in its character. In 1873, President Barnard at Columbia University explained, and I quote him, "If organic evolution were true, then the existence of God was impossible." The German materialist Buchner went on to say that that is exactly what evolution does. It proves that there is no God. Only a year after Darwin published The Origin of Species, Asa Gray wrote, and I quote him, "The proposition that things and events in nature were not designed to be so, if logically carried out, is doubtless tantamount to atheism. If Mr. Darwin believes that the events which he supposes to have occurred and the results we behold were undirected and undesigned, or if the physicist believes that the natural forces to which he refers phenomena are uncaused and undirected, no argument is needed to show that such belief is atheistic." And the Southern Presbyterian theologian Robert Dabney made a similar observation. He said, quote, "If you persist in recognizing nothing but natural forces, it will land you, if you are consistent, nowhere short of absolute atheism." Darwinism was trying to push a naturalistic philosophy or worldview. And though some people tried to dress it up, put it, under the same yoke with theism, the fact is that in and of itself, it aims at a naturalistic and thus atheistic view of the universe. Darwinism attempted to obliterate divine revelation, obliterate the intervention of the Creator in this world, and to obliterate our ability to know that there was a Creator who even started things out. And so Charles Hard said the system is thoroughly atheistic, as much as that of Epicurus and Kant, the positivist of France. Think for a minute here about T.H. Huxley, the man who was called Darwin's bulldog in the last century. Huxley fully realized that by his endorsement of evolution, he had taken up arms against the teaching of Scripture. He realized he had chosen certain assumptions and certain methods, and that he had proceeded upon a journey to explore the province of natural knowledge. And then I'd like to quote him. I think you'll find this interesting. He said, "Yet I found that whatever route I took, before long, I came to a tall, formidable-looking fence. Confident as I might be in the existence of an ancient and indefeasible right-of-way, before me stood the thorny barrier with its commendatory notice board, 'No thoroughfare by order of Moses.' The only alternatives were to give up my journey, which I was not minded to do, or to break the fence down and go through it." I mean, when you have people who are defending the theory, saying things like that with the literary flourish that you find, it should be obvious to us that when people pretend that evolution is just a neutral scientific attempt to explain things, that they aren't telling you the whole story. Evolution from the very beginning is marked in its original author and the ones who defended his theory is marked by an anti-religious motivation and a prejudice. And so Huxley preferred to stick to his own naturalistic presuppositions, and thus said, I had to denounce Mosaic teaching about the creation of the world. That if my approach to science was going to be pursued, I had to give up Moses. And so we should understand that when Darwin promulgated his theory of evolution, he was not riding simply on his scientific credentials. He was, as it were, body surfing on a wave of anti-religious sentiment. And that wave gave strength to the theory far more than did any of the empirical or scientific evidence that he could offer. We'll see more of that in a few moments. Let me quote W.T. Jones. Those of you who are students of philosophy will know that name. He's one of the leading writers in the history of philosophy in our century. Has a 5-volume set on the history of Western philosophy that's considered fairly standard in many of your colleges and universities. And he writes in his History of Philosophy, as we've pointed out, in the 19th century, the concept of development was in the air. Darwinism caught this interest and focused it on a specific biological problem. In doing so, it brought to bear an immense amount of concrete evidence and so proved, he puts in scare quotes, proved what had earlier been only a philosophical hypothesis. So here's this person who has no sympathy for Christianity admitting that if you know the history of thought, you realize that Darwin was just riding the crest of a wave, that philosophers in the 19th century have been proposing what we call developmental theories of reality, that reality is constantly in process, that it's constantly developing. Darwin comes along and he just focuses this philosophy, this way of looking at reality on a specific biological question. And so it appears to people he's being scientific. He's, quote, proving something when in fact he's just giving expression to a worldview, a perspective or a philosophy, a way of looking at things. Let me go back to Huxley for a minute and quote him further. Huxley says, "We wanted not to pin our faith to that or any other speculation, but to get hold of clear and definite conceptions. The origin of species by Darwin, the origin provided us with the working hypothesis we sought. Moreover, it did us the immense service of freeing us forever from the dilemma. Refuse to accept the Christian hypothesis, and what have you to propose that can be accepted by any cautious reasoner?" These are his own words. He says the reason Darwin caught on is because he gave us a way out. Now we don't have to answer this challenge. If you reject the Christian view, what do you have to put in its place? You see, whether it was true or not, Darwin's theory revealed a way to avoid creationism. And so Huxley hailed the origin of species as, and I quote him, "a flash of light which to a man who has lost himself in a dark night suddenly reveals a road that, whether it takes him straight home or not, certainly goes his way." Yeah, that says it all. Darwinism was going his way. It may not be home, it may not be direct, but that's the way he wanted to go. And so it was like a flash of light to him. And so Wilbert Rush correctly analyzes the situation when in his article, Darwinism, Science, and the Bible, he writes, "So it seems as if Darwin's prime claim to fame lies in this, that at the precise time when fear and dislike of God was on the increase, he happened to synthesize the previous evolution theories into a single presentation, clothing it in a hypothesis that seemed adequate to explain the marvelous adaptation of living things by the mere action of natural forces, without the necessity of bringing in divine intervention." George Bernard Shaw put it very well. He said, "The world jumped at Darwin." And well, it did. You may not know this. On the day that Darwin's Origin of Species appeared, November 24th, 1859, the printer had made 1,250 copies, quite a large run for that day. It sold out the first day. Yeah, as though the world wasn't waiting for Darwin, wasn't ready to leap at this, as Huxley put it, bright light that was going its way. Darwinism, see, it's just too convenient if you know the history of thought. When you look at that sort of thing, you say, why was Darwinism so popular? The reason Darwinism was so popular is because what it gave to men was an attempt to campaign for naturalism over against the supernatural explanation of man and his world. And so notice the campaigning nature of Darwinism, and notice that it was motivated by anti-religious prejudice. Is Darwinism non-religious? Oh, you cannot in all honesty say that. Even unbelievers will not say that. They'll say it, of course, was religious, not in the sense that it bowed down to some god or had some ritual, but it was religious because it had a commitment on religious issues that it was pursuing. Moreover, Darwin did not merely introduce a restricted biological hypothesis in his theory of evolution. What Darwin introduced was a complete way of looking at reality, what we call a worldview. And the popularity of his ideas, his evolutionary worldview, brought about a cultural revolution in the way in which people understand reality, brought about a new paradigm for understanding the world. And that was the paradigm of constant process and development. Darwin shifted attention away from the model of the world that saw things according to certain types and classes, saw, if you will, a kind of permanence in the way the world works and the way things exist in it. He shifted attention away from that view of reality to the idea that the world is in constant flux. Now you see, the idea was one of transition. Everything's in transition. Everything is developing. Everything is evolving. In fact, that has to be true of man's morals as well. That has to be the view of man's society and his social mores. That has to be the view of man's state and his constitutions. Everything changes. Isn't that true? You know, the people today don't think of anything being permanent or set or unchangeable. Everything's up for grabs. Everything's in flux. Everything passes. Well, that isn't the way people have always approached the nature of reality. But you see, evolution pushes that along, gives you not just a theory about biology, but a theory about the nature of reality as a whole. And where does this theory of nature as a whole come from? It doesn't come from examining the facts of our experience. You'll find that this naturalistic, evolutionary, or if you will, evolving, developmental understanding of reality can be found as early as the pre-Socratic philosophers. That's why it's always just a little bit, humorous to somebody who's a student of the history of philosophy to see people get all excited about evolution. Here's this new theory. New theory, nothing. Anaximander promulgated it years ago, many years before Christ, before Plato. There were others as well, Empedocles. The difference is that when the philosophers did it, it seemed like a speculative way to understand the whole of reality. When Darwin did it, people thought this is scientific. Now we're getting down to the details and the facts of observation. But in the nature of the case, evolution could not be detailed and observational because what it's talking about is the whole of reality and the way we approach it and understand it. And nobody has eyeball, observational experience of the whole of reality and how we're supposed to approach it. But you see, as long as people thought, well, he's doing science, when in fact what he was pushing is a philosophy, then of course they're buying a new paradigm without even knowing it, and buying it under the credentials of, well, this looks very scientific. Darwin's success in advancing his evolutionary argument rested completely upon his proposal of a mechanism for evolution. Others had believed in evolution. Darwin, however, offered what seemed to be a scientific explanation of it. He offered a mechanism for evolution, the mechanism of natural selection. The vast variety of species which exist or have existed have not been created in a special fashion by God, but Darwin said they have arisen over time by the operation of natural causes. And the machinery of this evolution was not the guiding hand of a personal creator, but rather natural selection. So in the struggle for existence, the fitter species will survive to propagate their kind and thus inevitably replace those species that are less fit, and bring it about that all of life will tend to get better and better because the fitter will survive and the less fit will die out. The doctrine of the survival of the fittest made the Genesis story superfluous. Now we don't need a creator God who makes all the diverse kinds of animals, plants, and so forth. Now we've got natural selection that can account for it. Naturalism could now become the victor philosophically because we have the facts, the mechanism that will drive out the traditional dogma and religious convictions about God. At least that's the way it would seem until someone will offer some serious philosophical attention to the theory of evolution itself. The alleged victory of scientific naturalism over theological supernaturalism, which people so readily attribute to Darwin's theory of evolution, bears scrutiny. And when you look at it, you'll see that the natural study of hard facts refutes not the theological dogmas of the Bible, but refutes nothing at all, because there was no natural study of hard facts that supported the theory of evolution in the first place. I'm going to wait till my second lecture to talk about some of the scientific evidence that evolution has trouble with, and just stick right now, for the remainder of this lecture, to analyzing the nature of the theory of evolution itself. I want you to notice first that evolution is not a testable scientific hypothesis. It is not a testable scientific hypothesis. It is rather a philosophical vision. It is a perspective that is preferred by some men to the biblical doctrine of creation. And ironically, the evolutionary theory does not end up defeating the notion of creative design as we see it taught in the Bible. It doesn't get rid of the idea of a teleological world. It rather reintroduces the notion of design in a metaphorical way and a naturalistic way. That is, evolution doesn't get rid of a designer. It just makes nature the designer rather than God. And in the nature of the case, pardon the pun, naturalists aren't allowed to import that kind of designer, and yet they keep talking about it. And so let's note that evolution was a thoroughly speculative theory in its origin. Evolution was first proposed by philosophers, not by scientists. The philosophical climate of Darwin's day was characterized by a view that was against the idea of a transcendent God intervening in the world. It was a philosophical milieu that emphasized dynamic and monistic process and was materialistic. Philosophers like Kant and Spinoza and Fichte and Goethe and Krauss and Hegel and Feuerbach and Engels and Marx and Diderot and Lamaitre and de Holbach and Buchner, all of them proposed something that was naturalistic, materialistic, and developmental in terms of how to account for reality and man's place in it. These are all philosophers who have said this. And so you'll notice in 1860, 1 year following, or the year following the publication of Darwin's book, in the Edinburgh Review, Volume 3, there's a reviewer who takes Darwin to task sharply. His name was Richard Owen, because when Darwin explained the historical background to the origin of species, he didn't make any mention of his philosophical precursors. And so he was sharply criticized very early. Within a year, you have a reviewer saying, Darwin, when you talk about the background of this theory, you make it sound like it's scientific, that all of a sudden you've come up with this. We know it's been around for a long time. The theory of evolution had its philosophical precursors and was encouraged more and more, not by the scientific evidence, but by the defection of theologians who were committed to a higher critical view of the Bible, who were unwilling to defend the historical authority of Scripture and the scientific accuracy of its teaching. Darwin came later. Darwin was the Johnny-come-lately in this process. You already have the philosophers talking about developmentalism, materialism, and naturalism. You have the theologians giving up the defense of the historical and scientific accuracy of the Bible, and then Darwin shows up on the scene and says, oh, well, here's a scientific explanation for where man came from. The theory of evolution was not only speculative in its origin, as we've said already, it was anti-religious in its motivation. And this is the very embarrassing thing, this speculative, anti-religious theory has been and continues to be maintained by men who recognize that it is contrary to the known facts or principles of scientific investigation. Men who have acknowledged the scientific problems with the theory nevertheless hold on to it tenaciously and will not let the counter evidence refute the theory. That indicates that it is what we call presuppositional in its nature. It's being held as an elementary assumption, so that when counter evidence is brought against it, people will say, well, I see that there's a problem here, but I'd rather hold on to my assumption and expect that the counter evidence will be explained away someday than to say that my assumption has been refuted. It is presuppositional in nature. It is, if you will, a paradigm, a way to think about the world and to organize the facts about the world. It is not a theory that arises from the facts, nor is it a theory that is controlled by the facts themselves. And so, quoting from the Encyclopedia of Philosophy, an article by Jack Kamensky, where he observes, it is fairly clear that the theory of evolution had the same logical status for Spencer, an early evolutionist, as the dialectic had for Hegel. These are damning words. The dialectic was Hegel's way of organizing all the facts of history and the direction of history. Hegel was once, this is probably apocryphal, but it captures the spirit of things. Hegel was once told by a student, but the facts don't fit your dialectic, Herr Professor. And to which Hegel is supposed to have said, then the facts be hung. Because you see, I've got a system for organizing things, and if something doesn't fit in with it, then it won't be called a fact. And so Kamensky says, it is fairly clear that the theory of evolution had the same logical status for Spencer as the dialectic had for Hegel. No evidence was to be allowed to repudiate the doctrine. That was undeniably the case in Darwin's day. It is undeniably the case today. Evolutionism has been surmounted over and over and over again by strong arguments. It was so at the very beginning. It has been refuted along the way. There are incredible arguments against it in our day, and yet people still maintain it. Evolution can still not explain the mechanism of evolution. Evolution can still not explain the taxonomic gaps in the fossil record. Evolution cannot avoid contradiction with known principles of genetics. Evolution cannot explain the appearance of matter or the eternality of matter. It cannot explain the emergence of life. It cannot explain the emergence of self-conscious intelligence. It cannot explain the emergence of morality.
Hello, hello.
Hey, welcome, guys.
Hey, God bless you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, good.
Hello.
Hello.
Wild Heart, welcome back.
Zay, thanks.
Well, what do you think, guys? You want to let Lionheart start?
Yeah,
Is it
if
open?
we can settle on like a topic or what the debate is about, or like a title or something.
I'm sorry, what?
If we could like decide on a topic, like what I know it's about evolution, but
Yeah.
is it specific or yeah?
Right. Eric, did you have maybe a specific line that you wanted
Well,
to go over?
Yeah, I'd like to begin really simply. Most people that I've spoken to that are evolutionists or atheists, evolutionist and atheist, most of the people that I've talked to assume right off the bat that they're beginning from a superior level. that they're speaking for science, that they're speaking for provable, testable science and scientific method. And I've found out through my studies, because I didn't have a dog in the race, I didn't care if evolution were true or not. I just wanted to know the truth. I believe that God created, and I will assert that God could create any way he wanted to. If he wanted to employ evolution as a means of varying the different lifestyle forms of life on the planet, he certainly could have. But I wanted to know if that's what he did. And I began to pursue the actual science, and I found out there isn't any actual science whatsoever behind evolution. And that may sound like a hard thing to understand what I'm saying. You might want to call me a lunatic or something, but let me point out that science, real science, is testable and repeatable. Okay. And we have a scientific method. For instance, we make an observation, we develop a hypothesis regarding that observation, and then we go about testing that hypothesis. And when we test that hypothesis, it's got to be a stringent test and an honest attempt to prove it wrong. Not prove it right, but to prove it wrong. That's what the scientific method is. So I would like to ask you, Wildheart, just right off the bat, is there anything about evolution that you believe is scientific evidence that it might be true?
Yeah, I agree with, apart from the God bit, I agree with most of what you said. Yeah, science starts off with a hypothesis. You go out to test it, and try to prove it false. I agree with all that. So your question was, is it a scientific? I mean, there is an entire field of science, biological evolution, that is devoted to it. So I would say it is definitely a science. Yeah.
Well, you can call anything you want science, and that's exactly what they've done here. Let me point out an example of what I'm talking about. Yeah. Would you consider, when I ask you for evidences of evolution, that evolution might be true?
Yeah.
Would you point out possibly transitional fossils?
I would start simpler than that. My definition of evolution is a change in allele frequencies over time.
Right,
Do you disagree that happens?
I understand what you're saying here, but I'm asking something completely different. What I'm asking is, most people that I talk to about evolution will say, look, I'll ask them, do you believe in transitional fossils? Do you believe transitional fossils exist? And the answer I normally get is that every fossil is transitional.
Yeah, that will be my answer, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. Now let's look at this scientifically.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know how they determine what is and is not a transitional fossil, but I'm going to tell you what they do. Yeah. This is the process. They make a find, they dig it up, and they look at, let's say, a whole skeleton. Let's say the Archaeopteryx. The Archaeopteryx, they say, is the first bird.
Yeah.
So they dig up this Archaeopteryx, and they said, well, look, this thing has the skeleton is built a lot like the theropod dinosaurs. And so this obviously descended from a theropod dinosaur, but then birds evolved from this thing. So it is a transitional species between theropod dinosaurs and birds. Now, if they want to make those observations, I have no problem with that. If they want to observe that there's a similarity between the Archaeopteryx skeleton and theropod dinosaurs, I don't care.
Yeah.
If they want to say, well, it's possible that it might have descended from that, that's fine. They're allowed to think whatever they want. Yeah. I'm not the mind police. But when they say this is science and this is fact, now we're separating in our positions because they have failed to test that. There's only one way to test whether or not the Archaeopteryx evolved from a theropod dinosaur. And that is if you have the DNA of a theropod dinosaur and the DNA of the Archaeopteryx, and you compare them to see whether or not the Archaeopteryx evolved from the theropod dinosaur. And then you would do the same with birds. The problem is, of course, they claim that we don't have any of the DNA from the theropod dinosaurs or the Archaeopteryx. So then that becomes absolutely untestable. And yet, if you open up all of the school books and all of our books on evolution, they come right out and they say, well, this one evolved from this evolved from this evolved from this. I can show you an evogram from Berkeley University's Evolution 101 class where they show this whole line of animals evolving into a whale from a Pakicetus.
Yeah.
A Pakicetus, a little dog-sized mammal, land mammal.
Yeah.
Not one test has gone into proving this. Not one DNA test. Now, when we do have the DNA to test these alleged, 1 second, please. When we do have the DNA to test one of these alleged lineages, it proves wrong. It proves evolution wrong. A good example of that is the dire wolf. When I was a kid, everybody told us, well, the dire wolf was the predecessor of all the dogs and the wolves that exist today. Well, of course, that's before we sequenced the DNA of the dire wolf.
Yeah.
And once we sequenced the DNA of the dire wolf, we found out that was false. The dogs and coyotes and wolves are not at all related to the dire wolf. So, no, that's what I'm talking about. You have no scientific method. You don't have any scientific method with any of your alleged evidences for evolution. Go ahead.
Right. So, but can we agree that science is always like tentative? It never says this is definitely true. It's always like down to probabilities. Like what you're saying. What I would say about us we just got more information, then science changed its mind as to whether it was the thingy of all. Well, before we had the DNA evidence, we might have said, based on probabilities, that it was the ancestor of all dogs or wolves or whatever. And then once we got the DNA evidence and it proved it wrong, then we updated. Do you see anything wrong with that?
Yeah, you got that backwards, brother.
That's how science works. Once we get new
evidence, that's not how science works. You just agreed with me that that's not how science works. Once you make your observation and then you develop your hypothesis, the next thing you have to do is test it. If it's going to be a valid scientific theory, you have to be able to test it. If you can't test it, it's unfalsifiable, and therefore it's unscientific. That's just the simple truth. And the simple truth is, you can't point to any evidence for evolution that has proven to be valid, to hold true. None.
But you're saying that based just on the fossil evidence, we thought one thing, and then we got new evidence, DNA, which proved it wrong. So I don't know how you can say that there are no tests. Surely DNA evidence would be the testing.
You're still missing the point.
Okay.
It's not testable.
What the DNA
therefore it's not scientific. And well, look, when you say you just said every fossil is transitional. You just said that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that was after you said that real science is testable and repeatable.
Yeah.
So if you can't test that, if you can't test every fossil is every fossil is transitional. If you can't test that, what you have is a fascinating sci-fi. That's all you have.
No, when people say that every fossil is transitional, what they mean is, like, if you go along, because of what we understand about evolution and how it works, every fossil must be transitional. because on a very slow
You're
scale.
assuming that evolution is true.
Do you understand how theories work?
You're going from a presupposition that evolution is true.
But if I can just have a minute to explain, like a theory is an overarching.
Yeah, that's not scientific method, brother.
Are you saying theories aren't scientific?
I'm saying you are laughing in the face of scientific method. You are saying, yes, I agree with you, Eric. If
No.
something is truly a scientific theory,
I'm not
then
saying
it's going to be testable and repeatable.
I was trying to explain what a scientific theory is, and you're saying that a scientific theory isn't scientific. I don't understand.
No, I'm saying your theory isn't scientific. The theory of evolution is not scientific.
I wasn't talking about specifically evolution. I was just trying to explain.
Well, that's our discussion, brother. That's what we're discussing.
Yeah,
Well,
but
What I'm looking for is
Going
there
serious.
any evidence? Is there any evidence you can point to that is testable and repeatable that would back evolution?
yeah, if we go slightly different route, if we move on to like fruit flies, we have tested like in a laboratory conditions with mated fruit flies over lots and lots of generations, and we have demonstrated that evolution is actually true. It does actually happen.
Where? Let's see that. I happen to know that
I haven't
the
got
truth is exactly opposite of what you have stated. We've been testing fruit flies for well over 100 years, millions and millions of generations, and they weren't able to get a fruit fly to evolve into anything but a fruit fly. They have had a few. They have had a few. They can mutate a fruit fly, but that's like if you take a human being and you take a pregnant woman and you subject her to so much radiation, it's going to deform her baby, but it's not creating a new species.
They don't subject them to radiation. They just breed them naturally.
Well, I'm sorry, you don't know anything about these tests, brother. They have used radiation. They have used all kinds of stuff, all kinds of climatic change and diet change and radiation and all kinds of chemicals to try to make these things.
They might do that with different studies, but they've also done it without any of that. It depends what they're trying to test for. But they have done it just naturally, just breeding them and see what happens.
Yeah, so
without chemicals or radiation or anything.
So let's get this to something concrete.
Yeah.
If you were going to pick out any fossil and say this is evolution, this is evidence of evolution, which one would it be?
That's the problem. You can't do it with one fossil. You can't put two fossils together and say you need. Have you seen the one with the humanoid skulls? Like about 20 or 30 of them in a row. And you can see over a long distance of time, they all change slightly. And what's fascinating is that if you ask two creationists, which one is the first human? So you show them all these human skulls or humanoid skulls. Each creationist will pick a different one as to where humans started. Do you know what I mean?
Well, what I know you mean is that you're again presupposing that evolution is true.
No.
You're not depending on scientific testing to prove your theory true. No. You're just saying, look, let's look at these. Oh my, that's your only hold on, that is your only test. Brother, that's not science, that's ridiculousness.
Sorry,
you can't just look at something.
Yeah, no, but I've just remembered another point. I think we're talking past each other. What you're arguing about is macroevolution. You're saying that macroevolution doesn't happen. Do you agree that microevolution happens?
Well, if you want to call microevolution like changes within species, like for instance, you have Chihuahuas and Great Danes. Yeah. Of course. Right. But if you notice, we've still got Chihuahuas and Great Danes. They're not turning into cats.
But we can agree on that. So we agree that some form of evolution happened. You're just arguing that species don't turn into different.
Well, species. I don't call that evolution. You know, that's like, now tell me something. Which
Yeah.
is superior then? Which is the most evolved dog? The
There is no
Great Dane or the Chihuahua?
there is no most evolved. That's just a misunderstanding. Like a slug
Okay.
the slug is as evolved as a human. They've both been evolving for the same amount of time. There is no
Well,
more or less evolved. That's just a misunderstanding of how evolution works.
Well, surely if you have an older population and a younger population, one is going to be, if evolution is true, one is going to be more evolved than the other.
No, because we all share a common ancestor. So a slug has been evolving exactly the same time as humans have been evolving. Because we all share a common ancestor. We started at the same time. That's
You are
just-
still missing the point. Okay. The first early humans, what did they look like?
I'm not. Are you talking about like Neanderthals or
Well, whatever you imagine the first early human.
humanoids?
I'll tell you what Nature Magazine tells us. Uh,
Is it?
Well,
No.
no, I'm not talking about monkeys. I'm talking about early humans.
No, they were. They were okay.
Well, you can feel free to try to prove they were something other than monkeys, but you're going to be there all night trying to prove it.
So do you think Neanderthals
spinning
were
in
humans?
circles.
Do you think?
Well,
Neanderthals were
that's the thing.
Homo
We
erectus?
actually have the DNA of the Neanderthal.
Yeah.
Now, when I was growing up, they told us that Neanderthal was the ancestor of mankind. And then
Yeah.
they said a Neanderthal is a cousin of mankind. They changed it. But now we've got the DNA. Now we've got the DNA of the Neanderthal. And guess what we found out?
Yeah. We were wrong. I don't see the problem you have with science being wrong. Science is wrong all
What
the time.
I'm going to ask you, though,
Yeah. Sorry, if I
how
can
were
just-
we wrong? What
if
did
I
they
can
find out?
just-
What did
I'm
they
not
find
sure.
out?
I presume they were going off like the fossils and like kind of trying to work it out off that, and then we discovered DNA. So they did the DNA testing, and then science. So we got more information. We
And
were
then
wrong
what did
in
we
the
find
past.
out? Yes. What did that information tell us?
That science was wrong and
Science
Neanderthals
was
and-
wrong.
Yeah,
Hold
science
on.
is
So
wrong.
how is science wrong? You mean
It's
men were wrong?
That's what science
Science
doesn't.
wasn't wrong.
Science doesn't have a problem with science being wrong. Science is wrong all the time.
So
What we do,
science isn't
I
wrong.
think
we
that
do, we update our information based on the.
Just hold on for a second. I think the clarification needed here is I think what Eric is saying is that he's saying the philosophical theory behind the connection was wrong, not the science and the empirical study itself. Is that what you're saying, Eric? If I'm not wrong?
Yes. I'm saying that these men were
Yeah.
wrong in their scientific theory. Okay.
Yeah.
They were wrong. They were proven wrong by real
Yeah.
science,
It happens all the time.
testable science.
I don't
So
see why
there
you
you
see
go.
that as a problem.
So let me get to the point then.
Yeah.
We have the DNA of the Neanderthal. We have the DNA of the Denisovan. We have the DNA of the modern human.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you for the definition, the biological definition of the word species. And how would you define it?
I think it's generally considered like when one set of animals can't breed with another. That is the definition of species. Like they evolved from
Well, that's
each
pretty
other,
close.
but once they can't interbreed, do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like you have a
They have
bird.
they have to be able to interbreed and
Yeah.
be capable of producing fertile offspring.
Yeah,
If they're
Yeah.
capable of that, if those two things are present, the
Yeah.
capability to produce fertile offspring and to interbreed, then they are the same species.
yeah,
That's the definition of species.
Yeah.
So now this brings us to something that's interesting. You see, that's 300-year-old science definition right there.
Yeah.
It predates evolution. Now, the reason evolutionists have a problem with species, and they do, is because of this. They've tried to use Denisovan and Neanderthal and modern man as a way to say that we have a family tree that proves evolution using these 3 creatures, Neanderthal, Denisovan, and modern man. But then when they sequenced the DNA of the Neanderthal and the Denisovan, they found out something really interesting. They interbred and they produced fertile offspring, the Denisovans and the Neanderthals. And then they did further work and found out that they interbred with us. Modern humans interbred with Neanderthal and produced fertile offspring.
Yeah.
Denisovans interbred with human beings and produced fertile offspring. Most of the world's population has Neanderthal and or Denisovan DNA in the world right now.
Yeah.
Their DNA is still alive, walking around in human bodies. So what's that prove to us?
Again, I don't see the problem. All that would
Well,
prove.
well, let me explain the problem.
All right.
That proves that we are the same species.
Yeah.
Modern humans, Denisovans, and Neanderthals are the same species. So you don't have evolution. You've got something the equivalent of the Italians dying out.
But that doesn't disprove evolution. All that means is that
You've got it wrong. I don't have to disprove evolution. You have to prove evolution.
And just let Wildheart answer here. Just let him go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So you did say that disproves evolution, by the way, but it doesn't matter.
No, I didn't say that.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, all that proves is that when we thought they were different species, Neanderthals, humans, and the other one, we were just wrong. Once we got the DNA evidence and we updated our theory, we found out they were the same species. It doesn't disprove evolution.
How many times do we have to prove your theory wrong, and to prove that you can't test any of your theories?
It happens
before you're going to say this isn't even scientific.
But while it's going on, no scientist claims that it's 100% right. They're just saying this is the best model that we have at the time. And if we get new
information, the best one when you can't prove a single one is transitional. Not even one. You can't prove to me that. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Scientific method.
That's what I'm talking about.
No matter what, whether it's evolution or anything else scientific, they just said this is the best model we've got at the time based on the data. And
your best model has a track record of zero.
I've been very kind and let you finish every sentence. If you can do the same with me, that would be great.
I just really wish you would understand the argument here.
I'm trying to explain it to you.
No, you're just washing it away. You're changing as you go. You described what a scientific theory was, and now you're saying you don't need that testability.
No, that's not what I said. What I'm saying is, all that science says, it doesn't say this is absolutely true. This theory we've got now is absolutely true. It's saying this is the best model we've got at this time. But if we get new information and new data, we will.
Now, how is it the best model you have when you don't have one piece, not one shred of testable evidence that's actually been tested and passed the test?
It's the best model we have at the time.
What is the one thing that you have tested and proven true?
What, in the whole of evolution?
Yes.
The allele frequencies change over time in the species. That is demonstrated. That is fact.
That doesn't prove that one species becomes another. You've never observed this.
That's what I'm saying. We're arguing. You're arguing against macroevolution, but you're using the term evolution. You're saying evolution doesn't exist, but you agree with microevolution. So
I agree that dogs and wolves are the same thing.
Right. Okay. But what I'm saying is you should be more clear. When you say evolution doesn't exist and evolution is false, what you should be saying is macroevolution is false and macroevolution doesn't exist, because you agree with microevolution. We've already established that.
But do you agree that macroevolution is false?
I'm not sure. I mean, I believe it, but I couldn't say like 100% because of the lifespan of humans.
Do you have one piece? Do you have one shred of testable evidence that proves that macroevolution is true?
Macroevolution, yeah, based on, like you said, the fossil record. I'm not. Oh yeah, DNA. You know is it chromosome 2? The break in chromosome 2, and after like a certain kind of monkey, that break is the same in all the species that followed, all the other monkeys and humans. The break in chromosome 2 is in exactly the same place, which indicates, at least it's evidence for, I'm not saying it proves it 100%, but at least it's evidence for humans having evolved from an earlier species. Yeah, which would be macroevolution.
Okay, and so tell me the ancient species of human DNA that was tested on that to prove it.
It wasn't DNA. It was, but it's just one particular chromosome.
Right, but
can't
here's
give
what
you-
you're saying.
I'm
Hold
not
on,
an expert.
you
Sorry.
keep misunderstanding my questions, and you keep answering things I'm not asking.
Right.
What I'm asking you is this, brother.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you say that we have this evidence, this this DNA evidence.
Yeah.
And that this second chromosome proves that somewhere back in time there was something that happened that fused two chromosomes together in the human species that from a monkey species. Okay, and that was the big change. Hold on. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
But that's not your evidence, and nor is it testable.
It is
that
testable.
isn't. I'll tell you what. No, it's not. What this is an observation. Okay, and your observation. Hold on and hear me out. Your observation is not your test. Once you make your observation, here's your observation.
Yeah.
The second chromosome in the human being. And then the second and third chromosome of say some sort of a monkey.
Yeah.
Okay, if you look at them, you'll see a similarity, and it looks like the second and third chromosome may have been fused together for the human being. Now, there are other ways to look at it too, and other people believe other things have happened. Hold on. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter. What you're observing is a similarity. Now you take that observation and you say, okay, well, this means that somewhere back the line, the human second and third chromosome, they were blended together somehow, melded together. Now that's fine. That's your theory.
That's evidence.
Now you've got to test it. Now you need the DNA of those that lived before that change and the DNA of those that lived after to see if in fact, well, you've got to test it somehow. What are you going to do? Here's what evolutionists love to do. They love to take their observation. Look, we have a similarity here, the second chromosome.
Yeah.
And they call that their test. They say this proves evolution.
No, that's evidence.
No, what it proves.
Sorry, can I have a minute? Let
me finish my point. I'm going to move you guys into a cross-examination round. Do you know how that works, Wildheart? Have you watched this before? So you're in the top left corner. I'll let you start. You get 3 minutes to speak and ask the questions, and you can interrupt and redirect as you see fit, okay, during that time period. I'll try to give you a warning before your time's up, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to start that now, okay? Whenever you're ready. Yeah.
So what I think you're doing is mixing up terms. You're saying that it's not a test. The test is the DNA, testing the DNA to see where the chromosomes are fused. That leads to the evidence. We test the chromosome fusion in one species. We test it in the next species, and it's in the same place. We test it in the next species, it's in the same place. We test it in humans, it's in the same place. So the test is the test of the DNA. The evidence is that it's the same in all species once the fusion has happened. That's all I want to say about that. I'll give the rest of my time. So,
no question.
You don't need any testing.
Sorry?
No questions? mean,
I'm
Okay.
just I'm kind of defending. Do you know what I mean? I don't.
okay, Eric,
I,
you're up.
I understand his point of view. Yeah, I'm just kind of
Okay.
defending the position.
Okay, so you're saying your observation is your test.
No, the
You're
test of the
saying
DNA.
step one. You're
Sorry.
saying step one is your observation that the DNA appears similar. The second chromosome appears similar to the second and third chromosome of an ape. And you're calling that your evidence for evolution, right?
When it's in different species, yeah. The test
Okay.
of the
Now let's examine that.
Yeah.
You make your observation. Well, this second chromosome looks like it might have been a fusion of the second and third chromosome in monkeys. Now, that becomes your hypothesis. But now you have to prove that. You have to prove that that happened. And the way you do that is through testing. And which means that you're going to need the DNA of prior samples and the DNA of current samples and the DNA of the samples all around those around the time that they saw this alleged change, which makes this an untestable theory. The fact that you observe a similarity is not the test of your theory.
Are you saying?
So,
Are you saying? That,
so your theory is untestable.
are you
there's
saying
no
that we
way-
don't? Sorry, are you saying that we don't have the DNA of humans?
Buddy, you're just not
Earlier
listening. I think
species-
you're trying so hard to defend
I'm asking-
evolution that you're not even listening to what I'm saying.
No, I'm asking
You're
a
trying
question.
so hard to defend evolution, Wildheart, that here's what
I'm
you're
s-
doing. You're
You
agreeing
said-
with me that a
Sorry.
valid theory, a valid scientific theory, has to be testable and repeatable,
Yeah.
and yet you're denying that yours has to be tested and repeated.
No, I'm not. I'm asking. The only way it could not be testable is if we don't have the DNA of humans, the DNA of the earlier species with the fusion.
How are you going to prove that our second and third chromosome fused together?
Through DNA testing.
No. How are you going to prove that's how it ended up like it is? Because there's a lot of scientists that disagree with you that that's a fusion in the first place. And they do so with very valid means. The telomeres, for instance. There's a
No.
large segment of science, just like there's a bunch of scientists that believe
Yeah.
that the Archaeopteryx is a dinosaur, and some believe it's a bird.
I
Some
mean,
believe
you
it's an intermediate.
can,
But
you can all,
there's arguments all around that. Okay.
Yeah.
There's no way to prove that it was a dinosaur.
20 seconds.
There's no way to prove that it was a bird because it's not testable. Nothing in evolution that you claim as evidence for evolution is testable and repeatable and will stand up to that testing. Nothing. The things that do stand up to the testing fail the testing.
You're in control, Wildheart.
right. Can I just say, and I should have mentioned this at the start, I am in no way an expert on evolution. I am very much a layman. I'm just going off what I've learned over the years. And again, the same as Eric, I don't really care whether evolution is true or not. It makes pretty much no difference to me whatsoever. It's not because I'm an atheist that I believe in evolution. Evolution could be false. It still wouldn't.
Are you an atheist?
I am, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Well,
that probably is why you believe in evolution. If you don't mind me
No, it's not. Nothing to do
contradicting your
with
word.
evolution could be false, and I could still not believe in a God.
Once you drop evolution, you have to believe in a creator.
Once, no.
Oh, yeah, because
Yeah.
it's the only thing
Well,
you've got
I
left.
think we're getting off track. If I can just,
Well, it's true. And
yeah.
I think that that's why you're being so unreasonable and so, pardon the expression, but hypocritical regarding your need for evidence.
Floor
You
is
know-
yours, Wildheart.
yeah, no. What I'm saying is, I think we have evidence. Yes, you're saying it's untestable, but if we have the DNA of humans, we have the DNA of an earlier species with the same fusion in the same chromosome, and we have the DNA of an earlier species which doesn't have that fusion.
Okay, which
The
early
testing-
species?
Sorry, the testing is the testing of the DNA, so it is testable. We can test the DNA in all three species. Once
Okay,
we've
so
done
tell
that,
me this.
if,
Tell me the
if
species.
they line up,
Interrupt
so
in a
there's
minute.
one species. Sorry. So there's
Okay,
one
I'm sorry.
species without the fusion in the chromosome. There's one species with it, and then humans have the same fusion in the same chromosome in the same place. That is the evidence. So it's testable, and it leads to evidence. I don't
Okay,
understand.
now I'm going to challenge you.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to challenge you.
Go on,
Bring
I
up
will
that.
put the rest of my time, by the way.
Let's see that DNA from those earlier species that you say were tested. Let's see.
Yeah.
Pull it up,
Oh,
because I can assure you that's never been done.
right. But this might take a while. Obviously, I'm not prepared for this, so I'm just
Well,
going to be Googling stuff, which won't be very entertaining.
I didn't do any special preparation either. But what you're going to find is, if I give you till next year, you're going to find that those tests have never been done. You're talking about the test of an early species of man. We don't even have the DNA of most of the things that they say were ancestor to man. So, I mean, and you don't have to go very far back in history either. We've got the DNA of the Neanderthal, we've got the DNA of the Denisovan. And they prove that they're the same species as humans. They were human beings because we all interbred and produced fertile offspring. That makes us the same species. So, no, all you had was mankind from the beginning of mankind. You don't have all of these like pre-Homo sapiens. You don't have their DNA to test this. You don't have it. These tests were never run. That's what I'm saying. They have pulled the wool over your eyes.
Jay, if I
They
can share my screen when you're ready.
Sure.
Right, according to, and I've just Googled this. It's from bmcgenomics.biomedcentral.com. The reduction of the chromosome number from 48 in the great apes to 46 in modern humans is thought to result from the end-to-end fusion of two ancestral non-human primate chromosomes, forming the human chromosome. So from non-human to human, HSA2. Genomic signatures of this event are the presence of inverted telomeric repeats at the HSA2 fusion sites and a block of degenerate satellite sequences that mark the remnants of the ancestral centromere. So it has been estimated that this fusion arose up to 4.5 million years ago. Results: we have developed an enhanced algorithm for the detection and efficient counting of the locally overrepresented weak to strong substitutions. By analysing the enrichments of these substitutions around the fusion site, we estimated its formation time at 0.9 MYA, whatever that is, with a 95% confidence interval of 0.4 to 1.5 MYA. Additionally,
That's
based on
0.9 million years ago.
Yeah, we have reconstructed the evolutionary distances among the great apes. Conclusion: results shed light on the HSA2 fusion formation and provide a novel computational alternative for the estimation of the speciation chronology. So I think
you don't realize it, but you just backed up every word I said. You just proved that they haven't done a single test on this. What they've done, they've examined the morphology of the DNA. That's what they've done. They've examined the morphology of the DNA.
Maybe I read it wrong.
Yeah, let me finish.
Okay.
What they said there is that we've noticed that there's this weird thing going on with the second chromosome in human beings. And we noticed that there's a similarity between the second and third chromosome in the great apes. So we're assuming that somewhere about 0.9 million years ago, there was a change in our DNA. And that's what they're saying. But they haven't done a single test. They haven't done a single test on any of these other creatures, these alleged early humans, to prove that they had that DNA or our DNA.
Right.
The second chromosome is because they don't have their DNA.
Can I just read some part of this again? We
You
have
just
developed.
read that there isn't a single test to prove
But you're
that.
saying it says we have developed an enhanced algorithm for the detection and efficient counting of the locally overrepresented weak to strong substitutions by analyzing the enrichment of these substitutions around the fusion site. We estimate its formation. How is that not a test?
They're assuming
They develop. It's not.
you don't see what that's saying, do you?
How are they assuming it? They developed an algorithm.
They developed an algorithm to be able to detect whether or not something appears to have possibly been fused.
How is developing
but then they have not tested it to find out if it in fact was fused. There's a big difference there.
How is developing an algorithm assuming?
Is the confusion in that there's some sort of a test there, but then there's a philosophical theory that's also brought into the testing? Is that where?
Well, see what they're doing. They're not testing to see whether or not these things were really fused. What he just read, they developed an algorithm to detect whether or not something may have been fused.
Can you define?
Okay, and
are you defining the word test?
Hold on. He asked a question. I'm going to answer it, brother.
Also.
And so that's what they were doing. They developed an algorithm to detect possible fusion points, but that's all it is. But now, once they pull them out, if they want to say that these were possibly fused at one time, I'm okay with that. But to say these were fused at one time without doing further testing to prove they were fused, I'm not okay with that.
But again,
because there's a lot of other people that believe that this came about some other way besides fusion. There's more than one theory regarding this, and you ought to educate yourself to that too.
Yeah,
now, here's what I'm saying.
Again, it goes back to what I was saying before. Science never says it's 100%. It says in the article it's 95% confident that this is correct.
But we know 100% sure that we interbred with Neanderthal and Denisovans. That's 100%.
100%.
100%.
100%.
We are the same species. 100% true.
Right.
Now,
okay.
Because we do have the DNA for that. That was tested.
According
to the definition of species, these DNA tests prove that humans, Neanderthals, and Denisovans were the same species.
I don't want to be insulting or condescending of anything, but I don't think you have a basic understanding of what the scientific method is and how it works and what it says.
Well, I just explained it to you and you agreed to it. You're the one that's not practicing it here, bud, when it comes to your pet theory. And you're an atheist that doesn't believe in God, so I can see your desperation to hold on to it. But that's exactly what it is.
I'm not going with God exists.
Then why are you being so unreasonable and not admitting to the fact that you don't have a test for these things? For instance, just to make this comment that you made earlier, all fossils are transitional. Well, show me the DNA test on the evogram that shows the Pakicetus is related to the whale.
When I say all fossils are transitional, it just means that evolution is constantly happening.
You're stating it as a fact. And you don't have the slightest proof. You don't have the first proof.
Take everything I say. When I say anything, just take it as like a confidence level. I'm not saying it's 100% true. I'm not saying anything is 100%. I don't believe you can believe anything is 100% true. I'm saying in science, we're going with the most likely model.
How can we look at the DNA?
It never says anything is 100% certain.
Are you saying that the claim that you can't believe anything is 100% true is 100% true?
No, that's what I believe.
I'm asking you if the claim itself
is 100% true. Sorry.
I'm asking you if the claim about the percentages being 100% true is 100% true itself.
No, again,
even
like
even the claim. Okay.
like all my beliefs, there's a confidence level.
What is the percentage on that particular belief?
I can't put an exact percentage on every
So
single belief
would
I
you
have.
say the
I'm just saying
percentages-
it's on a scale.
Would you
If
say
I
the
get evidence,
percentages are arbitrary and the scale is arbitrary?
no, I'm saying if I get evidence one way or another, my confidence level in that thing, whatever it is, will go up or down. And I can't put an exact.
Just for the
You know-
clarification, though, the claim that the original claim was everything is on a scale. There's nothing 100% that you believe. That very claim, what's the percentage on that claim?
Except that something exists, but we went over this the other night. Yeah.
No, I know, but
Apart from that, yeah.
that claim that's your methodology. What is the percentage of that claim?
What is the percentage that? Sorry, can you repeat
You
that?
said your methodology is that you don't believe anything 100%.
Yeah.
What is the percentage that belief is on the spectrum?
I would estimate it's up there. I'd say like maybe 95, 98%, something like that.
Where are you getting these numbers? Is this true
it's an
math or
It's an estimate. It's not an exact.
so like
I'm
95 to 98 out of
I'm
100
very confident.
times?
I'm
98,
very confident that I don't believe anything to 100% confidence. Yeah.
98% of the time, you're confident in that very claim.
Not percent of the time, I'm 98% confident.
Are you 98% sure there's no God and 2% positive that there may be?
Something like that, yeah. That'd be pretty close. Maybe not exact, but yeah.
Okay,
Certainly the
so,
Christian God. Yeah.
so if you're
I'm
going to,
99% sure that the Christian God doesn't exist.
why?
Because due to the attributes that most Christians give the Christian God, he's logically impossible.
How's that?
Most Christians describe the Christian God as omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient, and another one. And those, no being can be those things are mutually exclusive. It's logically impossible for the Christian God to exist, in my opinion.
You guys moving into a God discussion, or you want to do that another time? It's fine either way.
Yeah, I'm easy. I'm good.
What do you want to do, Eric?
I don't care, but I would like to touch on another couple of points here on evolution, because what I would really like to do, you keep giving me things that I'm not asking for when I'm asking you for evidence, for proofs, the scientific testing of evolution. And I'm going to give you something of a precise example here.
Yeah.
You said every fossil is transitional.
Yeah.
So what I want you to do is pick out one fossil where its DNA has been tested and compared to the DNA of its alleged forebearer and the DNA of its alleged descendant. For
I can't
instance,
do that. Like I say, I'm not an expert, and I haven't.
well, hold on.
I
Let
can't.
me tell you, you're not the only one that can't do that.
No.
Nobody in this world can do that.
I mean, that's your claim.
Hold on. I
That's
have
your claim,
talked.
but-
Yes, that's right. And I challenge you to challenge.
But I only can't do it because I haven't tried. I've not looked this up. That's the only reason. I might be able to do it. I'm not saying that I can't do it because it's impossible.
What I'm going to challenge you to do
Yeah.
is put your theory to the test.
If
If you really want to know the truth,
yeah, that's fine.
I will go with you to various websites. We can go to like Berkeley University.
Yeah.
I can take you to actual teachers that teach evolution, and we can ask them, what is the evidence? Where is the tested, verifiable evidence that any fossil is transitional? Any.
That's fine. And if that's
And
true,
you're going to find they have zero. I've done this 1,000 times.
Yeah.
They
I mean,
can't point you to a single one. That's
that's
why
fine.
you are clueless.
That's
because
fine. And if that's true, I'd be happy with that. My question would be though, if that is true and there are no transitional fossils, evolution isn't testable. Why do the majority of qualified scientists in the field believe that evolution happened like by
Well,
massive amount, like 99% or something?
That's
If
a
all you're saying
ridiculous
is,
number.
sorry, if I can just finish. If all
Yeah.
you're saying is true and there's absolutely no evidence for evolution and the fossil record is all bunk and false and there's no DNA evidence, how is it that like 99% of biological biologists, I think they're called, to be fair, why is it 99% of them believe in evolution? That seems odd.
All you're doing is repeating their rhetoric. That's a ridiculous number.
No, it's just-
99% of the scientists do not.
It was a
believe in
guess.
evolution.
I'll admit that. To be fair, it was a guess.
Yeah.
It might
Well,
not.
you know, I hear people say that all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Evolutionists, atheists. That's
I would
a
have to
common
fact
line.
check that. Yeah,
And
I'm
it's
not saying about the
complete
99%.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
completely
the
BS.
majority. You would agree with the majority at least.
No, I wouldn't agree with that. And I
So-
would also tell you this. You
So
don't
you're-
know the ramifications that come out against people that attack evolution just on a knowledge basis, on a testable basis.
So
I
your
want to give you an
claim,
example of this.
your
A guy named
sorry,
Armitage.
I can just make one point. So your claim is that the majority of biologists don't believe in evolution. That is your,
I'm saying that's
what
a
you're
very questionable figure. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I don't believe
saying. The majority
that
of
all these
biologists
scientists, right? I don't believe it.
don't
believe
believe
it.
in evolution.
No, I don't believe it. I don't believe that the majority of them are convinced. I believe that the majority of them have to toe the line. I
So you're
believe that
saying-
the majority of them are afraid to buck evolution because they know what happens to people when they do.
What happens
there
to
was a-
people when they book evolution?
well, let's look at Dick Armitage, man. He was a teacher. He was a tenured college professor. He found the horn of a triceratops, and just like Mary Schweitzer found live material, biological material in dinosaur bones, which is supposed to be impossible, Armitage found a living tissue, tissue in this triceratops horn. Right down to the cells. He found living cells in them.
Yeah.
They were not fossilized.
Yeah.
So all he did was publish the fact that he found this, and they fired him, dude. And he sued them and won. He took them to court and won.
So if I could have a minute, it's interesting that you bring up Mary Schweitzer, because what happened with her was, like you said, she did find non-fossilized flesh or DNA of a dinosaur. And what happened was, initially, because it went against everything we knew about evolution, they didn't believe her. But once it was tested and it was verified, it was embraced by the entire scientific community. It just means we learnt more and we changed what we thought about it. We changed our theory. We updated it. That is how science works. Once we found out it was correct and it was properly tested, initially she might have not been believed by everyone, but once it was verified, then it was embraced by the entire scientific community, and we started doing new tests, and it led to that. That is what happens.
Well,
That's
now
how
let's look at how they twisted that.
So I kind of just asked Jay, am I okay smoking on your screen? It's only tobacco. Is that okay? I can turn the camera off. If you want.
You always smoke, dude. What are you talking about?
No, okay. I just want to share.
Let me share something with you too about that. I've followed Mary Schweitzer very closely, and you're absolutely right. The first thing they did was say, "You're out of your mind. That's impossible that this soft tissue has lasted millions of years." The thing is, they're right. It is impossible. Now, where we're wrong, where they go wrong is this. We just found out that this stuff really can preserve for 85 million years or 360 million years. It really can preserve that long.
Yeah. Is it
They
something
are-
to do with
They are
carbon?
totally, hold on, they are totally forgetting real science. They're leaving it behind. What do I mean by this? All of these things have half-lives.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, do you know what a half-life is?
Yeah, is it the rate of an atom when it decays? Something
Well,
like that.
not just in atom. You can have like radiometric
Yeah.
decay, and
Yeah.
yeah, if something is radioactive, that has a half-life.
Mm.
But also biological tissues have half-lives. DNA has a half-life of 500 and some years.
Yeah.
Everything has a half-life. Now, some of the things that they found, some of the soft tissues that they found in dinosaur bone were various proteins and collagen. They found collagen in a bunch of them, not just one. They found these things now in hundreds of bones. So collagen, you've got different types of collagen. You have collagen in your blood that's only got a half-life of like 7 or 8 days.
Yeah.
You've got collagen in your skin that has a half-life of 15 years.
Mm.
Then you've got a collagen that is in your found in cartilage. That has a half-life of, I believe it's 117 years. Yeah, that's it. 117 years. Now, after 10 half-lives, you should basically have pretty much nothing left.
Yeah.
And the way half-lives work, 117-year half-life, at the end of 117 years, whatever collagen you had at the beginning, you've only got 50% of it now. At the end of another 117 years, you've only got 25% of it. At the end of another 117 years, you've only got like 12.5%.
Yeah. It incrementally reduces.
Right. Yeah. Each 117 years brings it down another 50%. So at the end of 10 half-lives, you basically have nothing left. Now, to understand what I'm saying here, let's understand to C14 test, when we use carbon-14, it's got a half-life of 5,740 years, something like that.
Yeah.
5,730 or 40. So at the end of 10 half-lives, you've got about 57,000 years. And that's why we don't carbon date anything that we suspect is over 60,000 years old.
Yeah.
Because there shouldn't be any carbon left in there to measure, right?
Yeah.
There should
But
be
we
none.
we do have different types of radiometric data, not just carbon data.
Right.
For things
Right.
that are,
That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm telling you why they don't carbon date anything over 50,000 years old, 50 or 60,000 years.
Yeah.
Now, that's a very important point. That means after 10 or so half-lives, you should have 0 left. So now let's look at this. If collagen has a half-life of 117 years, at the end of 10 half-lives, you've only got 1,170 years that have passed. That's all.
I get what you're saying.
So-
if I can respond to that.
So if you're looking at how old can this stuff be? How old can this collagen be that's being found in these dinosaur bones? Well, you look at it, you count it up. Now, she did some testing. Mary Schweitzer did some testing.
Yeah.
This was the second thing she did after she proved that this is biological material and it's not just biofoam.
Yeah.
She did the actual testing to see how long they could preserve the DNA, or not the DNA, but the collagen in there in these dinosaur bones. And she found that by using iron and oxygen, they used the iron from an ostrich egg, the blood from an ostrich egg.
Yeah.
They were able to preserve it. She was able to preserve or make it last 200 times its normal state.
Mm.
So let's take that and figure it out for a minute. I can pull up the.
No, I agree
Okay.
with what you're saying, but my only thing against it would be, I think the thing was the very special way it was preserved.
Well, that's
So
what I'm saying.
even if they tested it with ostrich blood, I'm imagining it wasn't preserved in ostrich blood, like naturally. It must have been preserved in a different way. So that I would suggest that test would be invalid, because I'm not sure the details, but it was preserved in a very special way. So even if you do testing with ostrich blood, that wouldn't have been the way it was preserved originally.
I'm not saying it would have been preserved with ostrich blood. It wasn't. Her point wasn't it was preserved by ostrich blood.
Yeah.
Her point was you can extend the preservation with iron and oxygen.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put a link in here for you, Jay.
But what I'm saying is, if they did test with ostrich blood and that isn't the way it was preserved originally, then that wouldn't give you.
Let me make my point. Let me make my point with this.
Yeah.
Let me make my point with this, if you don't mind. Jay, I put a link in the private chat there. This is Mary Schweitzer's actual paper on this very thing we're discussing here. And you'll see a role for iron and oxygen chemistry in preserving soft tissues, cells, and molecules from deep time. So it's not about can ostriches preserve this, but it's the role of oxygen and iron in preserving it. And these things were, there was, I guess, a lot of iron in the area where this particular fossil was found. And that's what clued her to go in this direction. Now, if you look at the abstract, scroll down to the abstract, she says some really interesting stuff here. The persistence of original soft tissues in Mesozoic fossil bone is not explained by current chemical degradation models. We identified iron particles associated with soft tissues recovered from 2 Mesozoic dinosaurs using transmission electron microscopy, electron energy loss spectrometry, micro X-ray diffraction, and Phi micro X-ray absorption. She's telling you the processes they use to test this. Now, she goes on to tell us that hemoglobin increased tissue preservation and masking proteins in fossil tissues. Hemoglobin increased tissue stability more than 200-fold, from approximately 3 days to more than 2 years at room temperature. Now, basically what she's telling you is she took some of this stuff and she tried to see how long it would preserve using iron and oxygen. And she found out that iron and oxygen could increase this 200-fold. Now, it's preservation. In other words, increasing the structural life 200-fold.
Yeah.
Now, that gives us something else to work with. We can work this 200-fold into our equation. And she was able to preserve things like your blood collagen is going to be wrecked after 7 or 8 hours. And this, whatever it was 3 days. But she was able to preserve it for more than 2 years, something that would legitimately die out in 3 days. Yeah. So you got a 200-fold increase in preservation. So now if we take our mathematical formula, you've got the half-life of collagen.
If I can just interrupt, sorry. I think the point is she's not talking about the specific fossil she found. What she's doing is a different test to see the best way they can come up with to preserve similar soft tissues. She's not saying this is how it happened with that fossil she found. She's
That's
just saying,
right. That's right. So
we're doing this-
listen to what I'm saying. That's not the
Yeah.
point I was making.
Okay.
Okay. What she's saying is she was able to preserve this tissue for 200-fold its normal when it should have been destroyed, its normal lifetime. She
Yeah.
was able to increase it 200-fold.
Yeah.
So let's just take that principle. And now let's look at the half-life of collagen. 117 years. After 10 half-lives, 1,117 years,
Yeah.
or 170 years, it should be gone.
But
Hold on,
take it-
dude.
no,
Let me finish. So now let's multiply it by the 200-fold. Now all of a sudden we have a possible lifetime of 234,000 years. That's the upper limit.
Yeah.
Nobody else has ever been able to preserve this
Yeah.
sort of a tissue any longer than 200-fold.
Yeah.
200-fold is the best we have.
yeah.
Okay, but you don't need 200-fold to go back 68 million years. You need
But-
You need 55,500-fold increase.
But you're taking this test and applying it to the fossil.
You don't
wave.
even understand where it's going, do you?
If you'd let me finish the sentence, I might be able to explain.
I don't.
You're
I don't think
taking
you-
this.
Go ahead.
No, one sentence. No.
Yeah, go ahead and see if you guys are on the same page. Let Wildheart finish.
Yeah.
his
So
statement.
you're taking this test, which wasn't related to the fossil they found. It wasn't related to that. They were just trying to find out the best way that they could preserve it. But you're taking this test, which isn't related to the fossil, and then applying it to the fossil and saying it because this is the best way we've found out to do it so far. We can only do it 200 times. But again, the two things are completely unrelated. All she's saying, this is a completely different test. It has
That's
nothing to do.
ridiculous.
It's got nothing to do with how the fossil was
That's
preserved
ridiculous.
naturally. It could have been
She
preserved in.
explains-
Obviously,
Let me
it wasn't
tell you why
preserved-
everybody. Let me tell you why everybody accepted this. And
Yeah.
this paper right
I'm
here
not-
is accepted by the scientific community.
I'm not saying
I'm
it's
gonna tell
not
you why.
accepted. I'm saying it doesn't apply to the fossil that she found.
Okay, well, let me show you why you're wrong.
Okay.
Because she says so right here in this abstract that the two dinosaurs, Mesozoic dinosaurs, that she found this in, one was a T-Rex and the other one, oh gosh, I forget what he's called. He's bigger than a T-Rex, though. Anyway, they found this in, she found it personally in two of them, and hundreds more have been found since then. So she's saying these were Mesozoic dinosaurs. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, if we just take the first sentence, the persistence.
Yeah, but do you know what a Mesozoic dinosaur is?
If I can just explain, please.
No, do you know what a Mesozoic dinosaur is, bro?
Yeah, Mesozoic is a period of time where dinosaurs lived, like the Jurassic, and yeah.
The
it's a
Jurassic
period
and
of time.
Cretaceous, yes.
Yeah.
Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous period is the Mesozoic.
Yeah.
So she said we found at least two dinosaurs from the Mesozoic that were found that to have soft tissues. And the one thing they had in common was that there were a lot of iron deposits where they were found, where they were both found. And it could have been this iron that masked and protected this soft tissue that allowed it to last 65 or 68 million years. That's what she's saying.
Yeah, but all she's saying is we don't know how. We currently don't know how it lasted that long. It doesn't prove that it didn't last that long. All she's saying is with our current. It says with our current. It is not explained by the current chemical models. All she's saying is we currently do not know how this happened, which is fine. I'm fine with that. We don't know.
You're not allowing me to draw out this point. I think it's your atheistic side is keeping me from it. But here's what she's saying now. She's saying
just reading your
that it was because of these iron deposits that she even thought to do this. And she was seeing simply this. She was asking the question and testing it. Her observation, she observed the iron deposits associated with these fossils. She
Yeah,
hypothesized,
did.
therefore, that it could have been the iron deposits that had something to do with that special preservation. And then she went about testing that by using iron and oxygen to test the veracity of these soft tissues over a period of time. And she was able to increase its longevity by 200-fold.
Yeah.
So that's all she said. And
I agree with that.
and
But,
she was.
but just because that's the
Now
best
let
she-
me finish, please.
It's just about done,
So-
and you can speak while hard.
So everybody saw this. Everybody left it alone. Everybody accepted it. They said, okay, now we know what's wrong. But here's what I want you to do.
No, they didn't.
I want you to take this now with what we know. We know that this collagen has a half-life of 117 years. Would you like for me to prove that to you?
Sorry, the collagen. No, I'll accept that. The collagen has
Okay.
a half-life. Yeah, that's fine.
They have 117 years.
Yeah.
And at the end of 10 half-lives, that
Yeah.
collagen should be gone. There should be no more collagen left in this, in any of these samples. That would mean if we're finding collagen in dinosaur bones,
Then we don't know how it happened.
then what we know is we have some explaining to do.
Yeah.
How that collagen should have been disappeared 1,170 years ago. Why are we still finding it in those bones? So obviously there's something going on. Now, other tests have been done to try to increase this 200-fold preservation, and they haven't been able to beat the 200-fold yet. That's the highest they've got. So now when you measure this out, 117 times 10 half-lives, these bones shouldn't be over 1,170 years old. But then when you add her 200-fold, you give her 200-fold increase, and suddenly you are able to expand this to a possible 234,000 years. That's 1,000. That's 117 years times 10 times 200. So that's 234,000 years old. Yet they're saying that these dinosaur bones are 68 million years old.
Yeah.
We're still falling far short of reaching 68 million years. You see, the science, dude, science dude tells us that these bones cannot even be 1 million years old.
No, it's not saying that. It's saying we don't know how. There's a difference. It's not saying it's impossible. It's just saying we haven't come up with the test yet to find out how it happened. All you're saying is science doesn't know something. Science doesn't know a lot of things. That's all you're saying. We don't know how it happened. I agree. That's fine.
So you don't find it incredible that they can't take us any further back than 234,000 years old.
Yeah, cool.
You know that puts it. If man evolved 200,000 years ago, then this puts man smack dab in the middle of the dinosaurs.
But you're saying due to this test, we know for certain that is the maximum that explains it.
No, I'm saying that we know that we don't have anything that shows us anything more.
I know.
This is the best we got.
That doesn't mean that. That doesn't mean that in the future we won't come up with better tests and better methods.
That's right.
Let me say something here, guys. I think Eric is saying there's a theory already in place being taught as fact in schools, and you're saying, well, we don't have evidence for it, but we will have evidence, or we might have evidence for the theory that's being taught as scientific fact.
No, because there are other reasons why we think dinosaurs are that old. It's not just based on this set. We're not just based on the age of dinosaurs on this test.
What are those reasons?
There are questions about it, and we don't necessarily know the answers. But
you said we think dinosaurs are older than that.
There's other evidence from other fields of science.
Like what?
The fossil record.
Yeah, we just said
radiometric
the fossil
data.
record doesn't prove anything.
This is like an anomaly that we can't explain. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe one day we'll understand it. Maybe
We
not.
just went through the fossil record, and I showed you, brother, that you don't have any evidence with the fossil record because you don't have the DNA to show all these alleged links.
Can you not do radiometric dating on fossils? Not carbon dating, obviously, but there are other radiometric dating that you can do on fossils. You don't need the DNA.
That's not it. That's not how they date fossils.
What radiometric dating?
That's not how they date fossils.
They can only date fossils based on the DNA, is what you're saying.
Based on the DNA?
Yeah.
No, and they don't have the DNA of these fossils.
Okay, how do we date fossils then? How's it done?
Yeah, they don't have the DNA to these fossils.
No, I'm saying
That's what I'm saying.
how do we date fossils currently?
How do you date fossils?
Yeah.
Pure imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah, pure imagination.
Fine.
That's all it is.
So they just make up a number, just pluck it.
Yes,
Top of the
that's
head.
exactly
Okay.
what they've done.
Yeah.
There's no science that backs it. None. Zero.
So you can't even carbon date them and get to a certain date. You're just saying they don't even bother doing that. They just pluck a number at the top of the head. Scientists just
You
No,
can't carbon
what's
date
that?
rocks.
what's that? 68 million
You
years. Why
can't. You
not?
can't you can't carbon date rocks.
I know you can't carbon date, but you can radiometric date. They have atoms that have a half-life like that. You can use different methods of radiometric dating that goes
Yes.
back farther
And-
than carbon dating. Well,
I like the fact that you did confess to different methods. Now let's look at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of them?
I'm going to have to plead ignorance on this. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay, we have like potassium argon testing.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Okay, yeah. There's, for instance,
Yeah.
there's several different isotopes that they can use for carbon dating, or for not carbon dating, isometric dating.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing.
But you're saying
every one of them give you a different age.
but you're
that's-
saying they didn't use any of them. They just plucked a number out. the top
No,
of it.
I'm saying even all of that is theoretical. Even all of that is simply theoretical.
But they did
and,
use it. They
yeah,
the
of course they
density
used it.
somewhere.
But the
Yeah.
interesting thing is, not only is it every one of these different elements giving us a theoretical age, and that's all
But
it
you-
is.
But
But
you
they
just
also
said-
give us a listen just a second, Wildheart, please.
Yeah.
They also give fantastically different ages. Like your potassium argon test is going to it's going to be wildly different from every other type of test you have.
but you just
They
gone,
all give different dates.
but you've just gone from
And
saying
what they do,
you've just gone from
you know,
sorry, can I say something? You've just gone from saying they just plucked a number off the top of their head, it's completely imaginary, the age of dinosaurs, to saying no, they use carbon dating, they used isometric dating, they used all these dating methods. So which one is it? They either use that, even if they're wrong, you're saying no, they just made it up, and then in the next sentence you said no, they used isometric dating. Which one is it?
you don't listen very well, brother.
No, I listened. That's exactly what you just said.
Well, go ahead. I'll let you talk for a few minutes, get whatever you like out of your system, and then I'll pull
No,
something out
fine.
for you.
No,
Go right
fine,
ahead.
carry on. No, I'm fine. Carry
right
on.
ahead.
What's the point on that? Yeah.
I want you to name for me 3 different elements that are used for this testing,
What isometric dating?
besides the potassium argon.
I don't know, to be honest. I genuinely don't know. Don't know.
What do you know about this?
Not a lot. Very little. Yeah, very little. Almost nothing, I would say. Specifically about radiometric dating, almost nothing.
Well, Wildheart, is this position that you're holding, wouldn't you classify this as some sort of dogmatic or faith-based position in these authorities if you don't understand the science at all?
Yeah, the thing is, the appeal to authority is not a fallacy as long as it's a genuine authority. I can appeal to scientists who are scientists in a specific field for information about that field. It's not a fallacy.
Well,
The fallacy should be called appeal to a fake authority. So long as they're an actual authority, it's not a fallacy, and there's nothing wrong with that. We all do it.
So a quote real authority couldn't be subjugated to any type of influence, financial agenda, anything of that sort. There's all sorts of things that could be entailed in what you're
Again,
calling
I'm just saying.
authority.
Yeah, again, nothing's 100% sure, but the appeal to an authority, as long as they're a genuine authority, is not a fallacy.
Well, that's what you've done. That's what you've done this
I'm not
entire
saying
time,
that
is appeal to authority.
I'm not saying they're 100% correct. I'm just saying they know more than me, so I'm going to trust them until they've
Not
been-
only are you appealing to authority, but you're doing so
Yeah.
in total ignorance of the science.
I am
and
appealing
I'm
to authority. I'm saying that there's nothing wrong with that, and it's not a fallacy, so long as they are a genuine authority.
It's still a faith-based position, though, because you don't understand the intricacies of it, and you don't know if the authority is influenced by an agenda or corruption as well. So it's still a faith-based position. You're just saying, okay, these authorities are legitimate in someone's opinion, which would be another authoritative opinion,
We've been
because
over
you
this.
wouldn't have the science.
I'll go with faith. Okay, I have a certain amount of confidence. If you want to call that faith, then that's fine. Yeah, fine.
Well, I'm just it's fine because I'm just
I have faith that the scientists who work in a specific field are correct about the job they're doing. Yeah, I have faith. Yeah, it's fine.
okay.
Okay, well, some of the dating methods are used for this. You've got, hold on just a second here. Gosh. Okay. You've got potassium argon, you've got uranium lead, and you've got about 24 other isotopes. And the way that this works, they say, okay, some of these isotopes they're saying have a half-life of like in the tens of billions of years. And I'd like to know, first of all, how do they know that? Nobody's been around for tens of billions of years to know that it has a half-life of tens of billions of years.
But
Number two, all of these tests give different results, which is why when you go to any archaeological site, you'll find that they've run several different types of tests on these, using several different types of isotopes, and they shop for dates. They will do several different tests, knowing that each one of them will give a wildly different range of years, whether it's uranium lead or potassium argon. And then they will pick the date that they like and say, well, this is where it dates back to. This happens all the time.
Yeah. Just
all the time. That's shopping. That's not fair. That's not a fair, honest way of doing things.
So you got thousands of scientists on thousands of different sites, all doing the same tests and just picking whichever one they like, and that's
pretty much.
No one's
pretty much. Yep.
Fine.
Now, if that doesn't disillusion you, I don't know what will. You're kind of a hopeless romantic, I would say, in an atheistic way.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. That's what they do. And they browbeat everybody that comes up with any evidence that is contrary to their dogma, which is why they fire.
Why did they do that, by the way? Why do you think scientists are set on? I mean, science is, if you go back in the history of science, like how you get famous in science is by proving the current theory wrong. That's how all the Nobel Prizes are won.
Well, no, you get paid to get along nowadays.
The goal in science is to overturn what we previously thought. That's what
you never heard of
trying to do.
Why would they go along to get along?
It's not a dogma.
You never heard of go along to get along?
If a scientist could prove evolution wrong, he would win a Nobel Prize. He would be on the front page of every.
I hear this crap.
Millionaire.
I hear this crap from every atheist that I talk to, and it's a ridiculous argument because I've just proved it wrong. You've just proved it wrong. Evolution is not evolution. You don't have a single shred of evidence for evolution. Nothing that is testable. You can't point to one verifiable transitional fossil.
You genuinely
Not a single one. And yet you sit here and say every fossil is transitional.
you
But you
genuinely
can't point to a single one
so
that has been tested and proven to be transitional. Not even one.
so you genuinely think that you just proved evolution wrong?
I generally think that if I haven't given you pause for thinking, then you're not into this for honesty, dude. You're not into this to find the truth.
No, I admit there are things I don't know, and there are things I can.
That's not what I just said.
Oh,
There's things that we all don't know. But if you
I'm
haven't,
saying
if this hasn't given you rise, if this haven't given
I'm
you
saying you have.
pause,
I'm
if
saying
this
you have.
hasn't-
You give me things to think about. I'm agreeing with you.
okay.
Yeah.
If it,
I'll check out radiometric dating and isotopic dating and that. But I doubt that anything I look up will tell me that scientists just do a lot of different dating methods and just pick the one they want.
look into all the scientists that were fired because they didn't toe the line. Look into that. I doubt if you
Well,
will. I don't think you will give that an honest shot.
Actually, wasn't Michael Behe the intelligent design guy? Wasn't he fired from his university for promoting out? Again, that's the other explanation. If they come up with a wacky intelligent design God-related theory that is obviously wrong, obviously they're going to get fired because they're just doing a bad job. That's the reason they get fired.
What's wacky about saying there was a creator?
Well, no, it's if the science doesn't support it, but you go around promoting it like
No,
Michael Behe did.
Your
Then
science.
that's why-
What
that's why
science
he got
doesn't
fired.
promote it?
That's why he got
What
fired.
science doesn't run? Aren't we in this for the truth?
What science doesn't what, sir?
You're not into
Well-
science for the truth. That's what I appreciated science for, was a way
Yeah.
to search the
Yeah.
truth.
But I'm saying if you come up with a theory that, like about what is it, something complexity, specified complexity, and it turns out that it's, there's no back into it, and you go around promoting it, and you're a professor at a university, probably the university is going to fire you for being just a bad scientist promoting bullshit.
Well, I could turn that around
Sorry, Joe. So
because all the evolutionists promote is bullshit. That's
Yeah.
all. They listen. They throw things out as fact that are not fact. They throw things out like saying we're the cousin to the Neanderthal when they know doggone good and well that we interbred and produced fertile offspring with them, making us the same species.
cousins.
They know
can
doggone
breed.
good and well that
Cousins,
the Dennis.
cousins are-
The,
cousins
What?
are the same species. Cousins can interbreed. They are the same species.
Oh, okay, guys. So I think we're kind of here at an impasse. It seems Eric has a little different understanding of perhaps agendas and corruption within the field. And Wildheart, you seem to think it's more of an objective, moral field that if something went wrong, we know about it, or it would be exposed, that it wouldn't necessarily be corrupted.
Eventually, I'm not saying there's no corruption in science. The almost certainly is. I'm just saying in general, with the checks and measures we got in place.
well, let me ask you a question.
It'll get found out eventually. Most of it. That's all I'm saying.
Why is it that you never hear anybody saying that we are the same species with the Neanderthal and the Denisovan?
I've not looked into it close enough to say no one says that. I'd have to. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm like I say, I'm just a layman.
Would you be interested?
I have never heard that, but it's probably just because I haven't looked into it deep enough. I know we do have. I've heard that we do have Neanderthal DNA, or most people do. I'm not disputing that. But I think what probably happened is we thought previously that we weren't related to Neanderthals, and then we found out more evidence and found out we were wrong, and we actually are related to Neanderthals. I think that's what probably happened, rather than anything else.
Okay, guys, I
Okay.
think this is a good time maybe to call it. You come back and discuss some more, or you guys can come
Sure.
back and talk theology too. I know you guys both like to discuss that.
Yeah.
I would enjoy that.
Cool.
Wild
That's
Heart,
all.
would you mind if I leave you with something?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to post it in the chat here, and
No,
that's
I'll
for
vote that
you,
down.
and that's also for JG if you'd be interested in it. But that's for you. It's nature.com.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with Nature. It's a scientific magazine,
Yeah.
and there they talk about the fact that, as a matter of fact, let me.
But I can tell you immediately that I agree with. I've just read the first line, but I agree with what it says. Yeah, Neanderthals and humans interbred. Again,
Yeah.
I've never disputed that. I agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, when you look up the definition, the biological definition of species, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. A
But
species is defined as like
Yeah.
animals that are capable of interbreeding and
Yeah.
producing fertile offspring.
are
And-
scientists saying nowadays that we're not related to Neanderthals? Because I think it's a fairly accepted fact.
No.
That we are they
Yeah.
still say? Are more scientists still saying we're not related to? Or we didn't interbreed with Neanderthals?
So you agree that most of them agree we did?
I think so. I'm not sure. I'm not.
Okay. Well, yeah, most of them do.
Yeah.
But now they've got to take the
So what's
next
the problem?
step. They now they have to take the next step, and they've got to subject that to the definition, the biological definition of species, and simply admit that according to the biological definition of species, this means that we are the same species with the Neanderthal and the Denisovan. We're not three different species. We're the same species,
That's
according
fine.
to the definition of species. That's what I was. If you'll take that
Yeah.
and begin to look into it, and I will talk to you anytime you want. And I have all
Yeah. Been good
kinds of
speaking to you.
information.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks a
I've
lot.
got tons of peer-reviewed stuff I'd love to share with you.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, JJ. It's been good.
Okay.
Thank
thanks,
you,
guys.
brother.
Appreciate
Have
this.
a good day.
You too. Cheers.
You guys take care. Grace and peace.
Thank you. Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
Jay.
Bye.
God bless you guys.